Oh, you're so loud. When you get older, you don't understand things anymore, huh? Ugh, I can't stand it. In the end, only young people truly get me.
My husband said that and laughed. He was cheating on me while mocking me. It wasn't just that. There was even an illegitimate child between my husband and his mistress. Layer upon layer of lies, lies, lies. Well, then, if that's the case, I'll fake it too. I see. Yeah, thanks for the hard work with your business. You'll be happy with this, right? You'll be deceived by this until I finish preparing and make you realize the anger of me and my daughter who have been neglected. You'll feel it. My name is Catherine Martin. I'm 35 years old. When I was younger, I was full of energy and engaged in creative activities. But after working as a company employee, I'm now a stay-at-home mom. The reason I ended up like this is because of my encounter with my husband, Kyle. I used to be confident, and I believed without a doubt that I would live my life using my talents. That was my dream and my life. But that didn't happen. The creativity and drive I thought would never run out eventually faded, and I moved away from my dream. I guess it was what they call losing my talent. With that, I had nothing left, and I had no choice but to find a regular office job. People advised me that I should take a break and wait for my talent to come back. But it felt like I was turning a blind eye to reality, so I didn't want to do that. Instead, I decided to leave behind my former self and face reality. But at the same time, I felt a slight resistance to living the ordinary life. It wasn't that I looked down on being ordinary or being an office worker. In fact, I had great respect for those who worked hard and lived with sincerity. Originally, I lived my life the way I wanted, and I was far removed from the concept of endurance or restraint. That's why I was anxious about whether I could live a normal life, and it created that sense of resistance. That's when I met Kyle at the company where I got my job. Kyle was a younger senior, and as someone who had only had a limited range of experiences in the workforce, I was helped a lot by him. During that time, we became fairly close and started talking about various things. If that had been the case, we would have just remained as a typical senior and junior, but Kyle had another side to him.
I'm sorry, but I need to take the day off tomorrow.
Why?
I guess I can tell you. Actually, I have a live show.
Kyle was chasing his dream of becoming a singer while working as an office worker. That was a big surprise to me. I could understand in my head that there were people who lived that kind of life. But actually seeing someone living like that and having him close to me was shocking. So, I got his permission and went to see his live show. It was at a small live house, and Kyle's passionate performance was undeniably serious. I was moved by it and grew closer to him, eventually leading to a romantic relationship. Kyle seemed fulfilled by our interactions, and it didn't take long for us to get married. The years of newlywed life and the birth of our daughter, Mary, were undeniably happy times. Eventually, I quit my job after giving birth, but I had a fulfilling time as an office worker. It was proof that Kyle helped shake me out of the rut I had fallen into. I was grateful for the days I spent with Kyle, the ones I had because of meeting him. That's why I was excited for the future, walking forward with Kyle and Mary. However, it seemed that Kyle himself wanted to go in a different direction from us.
I don't know if I want to live a normal life like this.
It was probably around the time when I started contributing some of my income from a side job I had started, hoping to help with our finances. Kyle, sensing that we had a bit of financial breathing room, began to act more freely, or rather selfishly. He started staying out late drinking, calling it inspiration for my craft, and spent weekends gambling at casinos. If those late nights drinking had actually helped Kyle's music career, it would have been fine. But in reality, it only had a negative effect. The day after drinking, he ended up hoarse during a live performance, disappointing the audience. If this had only happened once or twice, I might have just laughed it off. But it kept piling up. Every time his loyal fans, who used to be in the dozens, left one by one. Kyle, at this rate, everyone's going to quit being a fan. It's not too late to turn things around now. You need to get your life in order and make sure your voice and body are in top shape. I couldn't stand watching it anymore. So I broke my promise not to interfere, and I directly gave him some tough advice. But maybe that wasn't the right move. Kyle glared at me and spat out.
Look, what's going to come out of this wholesome lifestyle? You can't become big staying small. But I guess you wouldn't understand, huh?
You can still become big no matter the approach. But that only works if you're truly dedicated to your music. Right now, I can't see how you could ever get anywhere.
You're so loud. When you get older, you don't understand things anymore, huh? I can't stand it. In the end, only young people truly get me.
His words at that moment left a slight sting with me, but I couldn't pinpoint what it was. After that conversation, Kyle's behavior just kept getting worse.
Dad, you're off work today, right? Play with me?
Mary, my regular work isn't my real job. I'm busy with it right now, so I can't play.
Kyle said that, but what he was actually doing was fiddling with his phone. Was he messaging someone or playing a game? Either way, it wasn't work. At the very least, I hoped he was contacting people about his next live show. But I knew he had fought with the manager of the live house he was close with. When he had the most fans, all the live houses were happy to have him. But now, it seemed like he had become a nuisance. It's no surprise. He was late to his set, didn't perform at his best, and there was no apology for any of it. It makes more sense to give the time slot to some passionate, promising young talent. If I, someone close to him, felt that way, I can only imagine how the people further removed from him feel.
Hey, Catherine, play with Mary.
Kyle, Mary wants to play with you. I know you're busy with your career, but is it really so bad to spend a little time with her? When I said that, Kyle clicked his tongue loudly.
You know, right now, it's a critical time to expand my image. You're just sitting around at home all day. You could play with her.
It's not like I'm doing nothing, you know? I've got housework and remote work. I told you about that.
That's nothing, right?
Kyle said that and went back to his phone, ignoring Mary. Sure, imagination might be important for putting emotions into your singing. But above all, what Kyle needs right now is to improve his vocal ability and singing skills. However, recently, Kyle hasn't even been practicing singing, something he used to do every day. Is it really so wrong to want him to at least spend a little time playing with Mary? Even if I ask, Kyle probably wouldn't give me a proper answer. It seems like, as his dream fades, Kyle has stopped caring about his work too. When I asked his former colleagues how Kyle was doing at work, they said he'd ignore requests for overtime and even lock himself in the bathroom to kill time until the end of the day, always looking for ways to slack off. And on top of that, he started using the money from our family account, which I earn, on whatever he wanted. If things keep going like this, our family is going to fall apart. That sense of urgency hit me, and I decided to break the rules just once. A few months later,
Hey, Catherine, Mary, we're going on a family trip this Sunday.
suddenly, Kyle said that.
Really?
Yeah, really. I'll play with you that day.
Kyle said that, and with a big smile, picked up Mary, lifting her high. It had been years since he'd done anything fatherly like this. Even for Mary's birthday a little while ago, Kyle had left the gift buying to me. After we had dinner and cake, he quickly locked himself in his room. I did wonder why he was acting this way, but I quickly figured it out. I asked him, even though I had a feeling, "What's going on all of a sudden?" Kyle, with a proud look on his face, responded as if he'd been waiting for me to ask.
Finally, my talent's been recognized. A famous composer who just got back into the scene is going to work on my song.
That's great, right?
Why are you giving me such a half-hearted response?
I expressed my happiness in my own way, but it seemed that it didn't please Kyle. However, his happiness must have outweighed that. He quickly regained his mood and said,
Whatever. From now on, you guys might get some of the benefits too. Well, I guess you're already living off my scraps, huh?
"So, about this family trip, do you already know where we're going?" I didn't want to spoil his good mood, so I purposely ignored his rude comment and asked. Kyle said we were going to stay at an amusement park a little ways from here. He'd already made the reservations, and we were just about to head there. Wow, you're pretty efficient. By the way, how did you pay for it?
Don't worry about the money. You can just go have fun on the day.
Kyle said, smiling proudly. There were a few things that concerned me, but I decided to stay silent. Maybe this could be a fresh start for the three of us as a family. I was dreaming about our first family trip together. I'm sure Mary wants that too. Maybe that's why the days went by so quickly, and the day of the family trip finally arrived. But the dream we were headed toward began to look more and more doubtful. At the first facility we went to in the morning, Kyle only spent the first hour or so with Mary.
Oh, sorry. The composer wants to meet with me, so I need to go. You know, he's a pro, so he's thorough.
With that excuse, Kyle kept stepping out to take phone calls. At first, Mary was excited to play with Kyle, but eventually she must have realized that it was the same as always. By lunchtime, she started playing with me instead. Then at lunchtime, our trip was about to fall apart completely.
Sorry, I have to have a longer conversation. Can you keep yourself busy for a while?
Kyle said this as he saw Mary playing with a mascot character. What? You said you'd play with Mary today.
I did play with her.
Only for a little bit at the beginning. I'm happy you brought us here today, but if you're going to act like nothing's changed, what's the point of coming at all? Since it was a family trip, I had planned to hold back my anger. But I couldn't stay quiet when the core of the trip, Kyle, was disappearing. First of all, Was that meeting really necessary? Just as I was about to ask, Kyle's phone rang loudly. Kyle, seeming to see this as an opportunity, quickly grabbed his phone and walked away, thinking it would be his excuse. There was no trace of guilt on his face. In fact, he seemed to enjoy leaving us behind, with a smile that looked almost amused. I was about to chase after him, but Mary's words stopped me in my tracks.
Mom, what's wrong?
I didn't want to make Mary sad. So, I did my best to suppress my anger and turned to face her. Sorry, Mary. Dad said he has an important discussion to take care of.
He went off somewhere, huh? It's fine, really.
Contrary to how deeply sorry I felt, Mary didn't seem particularly affected.
Dad always does that. I want to play with you, Mom.
Before I knew it, Mary was almost about to become a grade schooler. She had been thinking things through, much more than I, and had come to her own conclusions. To be honest, I never wanted to make her give up on her father like this. But Mary had come to terms with it and wanted to enjoy the day with me. I didn't want to ruin that because of my own feelings. So I pushed aside my own regrets and focused on having fun with Mary. For the next few hours, we completely left Kyle behind and enjoyed various rides. Each one was more fun than I'd imagined, and what mattered most was that Mary was smiling, so I tried to tell myself that this was enough. Then something happened.
What?
After watching a stage show, Mary and I were walking to figure out where to go next. Mary, who had been looking through the opera glasses she had bought to enjoy the show more, tilted her head. Is something wrong?
Dad's playing too. I wonder who he's with.
Can I see? When I asked, Mary immediately handed me the opera glasses. I quickly shifted my focus to the area she had been watching. Sure enough, Kyle was there. And just as Mary had said, there were two people next to him I didn't know. One was a young woman who looked about a decade younger than me. The other was a boy, a little younger than Mary. Incredibly, Kyle was smiling. He had his arm around the woman and was holding the boy's hand tightly. He had left us behind, but in front of them, he was playing the role of a father. Of course, it didn't look like a business meeting, which was obvious. What is he doing? I whispered to myself, though the answer was clear. It is cheating. That alone is unforgivable, but Kyle is treating the boy like his own son. No, maybe he really is his son? With a surge of doubt, the anger I had tried to suppress earlier began to surface again. But I didn't want to let it out in front of Mary, who had been looking forward to the day. I clenched my lips, barely managing to hold back my anger, and then focused solely on playing with Mary. Mary had a slightly puzzled look on her face, but it disappeared as soon as I concentrated on having fun with her. Where did you go? That night, in the room at the hotel we had booked, I asked Kyle. It was just the right time, as Mary had fallen asleep. I could no longer hide the expression I had been trying to keep from her.
What's with that scary face? I told you I had a meeting, didn't I?
Even now, Kyle was telling a blatant lie. Yes, I knew the meeting was a lie. But for Mary's sake, I chose to stay silent. I had been willing to put up with him talking on his phone or playing games. But it wasn't that simple. Kyle had been betraying us for who knows how long. Now that I knew that, I had no intention of showing him any mercy. I was going to take everything from Kyle and make him face the consequences. I looked at Mary's peaceful sleeping face, unaware of everything. And with that, I made my firm decision. So can you tell me who that woman and boy you were with were? When I said that, Kyle was clearly shaken. He tightened his lips and shifted his gaze away from me.
What you were watching? Well, that's the composer's family.
Is that so?
Yeah, they just happen to be here too.
Kyle piled lie upon lie, thinking I knew nothing. My guess is that happen to be here is a lie. Most likely, Kyle wanted to spend time with both us and them here. The reason was incredibly simple. It was a financial issue. Kyle had boasted that money shouldn't be a concern. He probably got some money through some means, but I doubt it was enough to take both us and them on an overnight trip. So, in an effort to save, he combined the family service. But why did he bring us and them here? For them, he probably just wanted to enjoy himself. His expression told me that. But why did we need to be here? It was probably to keep me from suspecting infidelity. He probably thought he could play the role of a family man, showing he could afford a family trip. But ironically, this ended up being the thing that made Mary and me discover his affair. Still, this brings up the question, why now? Embarrassingly, until today, while the possibility of infidelity had crossed my mind, I had never been certain. Kyle must have felt that too. So why would he think a family trip would prevent me from suspecting? After thinking it through, I somewhat understood what Kyle had been trying to do. With that in mind, I decided what my best course of action was. As Kyle continued piling up his useless excuses, I thought it over and then spoke with a big smile on my face. Is that so? Yeah, thanks for your hard work with the business.
Oh yeah, that's right. I'm doing my best.
He probably thought I was agreeing with him. Suddenly, when I supported his argument, he accepted it without a second thought. Immediately after, Kyle let out a small, dismissive snort at me. He must have thought I was just a clueless fool who hadn't noticed anything. But for now, that worked in my favor. So I kept up the appearance of being clueless, flashing a carefree smile. Kyle, completely unaware of the look behind my smile, seemed to feel emboldened.
So I'm feeling a bit tired. I'm going to grab a drink.
He said he was heading to the hotel bar, but I figured he was really going to meet up with that family. In other words, he had completely let his guard down around me. Sure, I'd love to join you, but sometimes you just want to be alone. Have a good time. Wanting to maintain that illusion, I watched Kyle leave with a smile on my face. Following him to catch him in the act wasn't a bad idea, but I couldn't leave Mary sleeping unaware. Also, even if I confronted him now, the evidence wasn't enough, and he could easily talk his way out of it. If I was going to catch him, I needed concrete proof. So I decided to stay calm and support Kyle's actions, pretending nothing was wrong during the trip. Kyle seemed pleased with himself, and his mood improved while we were together. However, it was undeniable that he spent more time with the family than with us. Suppressing the anger that was ready to burst from every part of my body, I returned from the trip without raising any suspicion, and the next day, I began preparing to take Kyle down. The first thing I did was hire a private investigator to look into his affair. It might seem like a common approach, but it was the best way to secure undeniable proof. In reality, it turned out to be the right move. The private investigator gathered a number of pieces of evidence of Kyle's affair in a relatively short period of time. On top of that, they also investigated the affair partner's identity and background. Her name is Rachel Brown, 27 years old. She is an office worker and works at a company that is a business partner of Kyle's. So, the meeting wasn't exactly unusual. It seemed she had also been attending Kyle's live performances frequently. Since the birth of Mary, I had been going to fewer live shows, but now I hated myself for not noticing sooner. In any case, the two had started their relationship, and it seemed like they had gone all the way. The child that was with them that day was Tyler Brown, 4 years old. It was almost certain that he was Kyle's son. Learning this, I was utterly shocked by Kyle. I couldn't forgive the affair, but the fact that he had fathered a child with someone else was too much. If he had come to me, either to talk things over or ask for a divorce and take responsibility, I might have been able to accept it. But his current half-hearted, wishy-washy actions were completely dishonest to both families. My anger deepened even more, and the next thing I did was contact my in-laws. I had to inform them about the affair and discuss divorce and what to do next. My relationship with my in-laws wasn't particularly close. We got along well enough to get their approval for the marriage, but we didn't keep in regular contact. So there was a chance they could side with Kyle after hearing me out. But if I didn't approach them honestly, I'd be no better than Kyle. With that in mind, I explained the situation to my in-laws. They were shocked by the evidence of the affair, and I felt a little bad about it. But in the end, my in-laws agreed to the divorce and promised to stand by me. They were angry as parents about Kyle's irresponsible actions. And what made me incredibly happy was that, as parents, they were concerned about Mary's future and expressed their desire to convince Kyle to give me custody. Next, I explained the situation to my own parents. I wasn't worried about their reaction, and as expected, both of them supported me. Finally, I had to talk to Mary. This was the conversation I should have had first, but I hadn't been able to gather the courage. Mary is a smart child, despite being still so young, but she wasn't even in elementary school yet. I had been struggling with how to explain her father's unforgivable actions to her, or if I even should. But at this point, I couldn't live with Kyle anymore. For whatever reason, I had to keep Mary away from him. In that case, the best I could do was to explain things to her in a way she could understand as much as possible. In place of Kyle, who had continued to lie all this time, I carefully chose my words and shared them with Mary. On a day off, when Kyle had gone to Rachel's, I was at home with Mary, where Kyle wasn't around. I explained that Kyle had done something wrong, and that's why we couldn't be together anymore. However, Mary's response exceeded my expectations.
He's been lying to us all this time and making Mom sad, right? So, Dad has to be properly punished.
Yeah, that's right. But is it okay that we can't be together anymore?
I know Mom has always worked hard for Dad. but Dad didn't take care of you, so I hate him. He doesn't even play with me.
As she said this, Mary gently held my hand, which I had been using to squat down and speak to her.
I'm okay, so you have to get angry with Dad for me.
Thank you, Mary. I hugged Mary tightly, trying to repay her kindness, even if just a little. And at the same time, I reaffirmed my determination. To make Mary's wish come true, I had to properly get angry at Kyle. As for Kyle, he was oblivious to the situation and was still riding high. He thought his affair with Rachel had gone unnoticed and kept seeing her frequently, but that wasn't all. Kyle had rushed to announce online that a famous composer would be providing him with a new song. This caught the attention of the composer's fans and soon became a topic of conversation online. Kyle must be in a fantastic mood right now. But I knew better than anyone that his happiness wouldn't last. To let him know this, I sent him a message saying I wanted to talk on Sunday. He would probably head to Rachel's place again, citing overtime. If I waited to speak to him face to face, I didn't know when it would happen. To my surprise, he replied almost immediately.
Perfect timing. I actually have something I want to talk about too.
A few days later, on Sunday afternoon, Kyle sat down, muttering the same words from his message. We were in a familiar cafe, one that had been a regular spot for the two of us. We had often talked here when we were dating, so it seemed fitting to end our relationship in this place. I could have talked to him at home, but I decided against it, considering the possibility of things getting out of hand. With a third party's gaze, I figured it wouldn't escalate into something chaotic. By the way, I had left Mary with my parents for the day. That's why I felt I could face Kyle without worry. So, shall we start with what you want to say?
Are you sure? No complaints afterward, all right?
Kyle threw me a disdainful glance, as if he was looking down on me. And then, with a creepy grin on his face, he told me,
Catherine, please divorce me.
well, and why do you want a divorce? He probably thought I would be shocked and flustered. Though his face showed a moment of confusion, it quickly returned to his earlier smug expression.
There are plenty of reasons.
With that, Kyle started listing off reasons for the divorce. I had stopped improving myself since we got married. I was too focused on housework and didn't pay attention to him. I acted like I was his equal even though I didn't earn much. I didn't even try to improve my housework skills. I wasn't taking proper care of Mary. It was a list of random complaints, obviously thrown together. It was laughable that he criticized me for being too focused on housework and then complained that I hadn't improved my skills. And who was spending the money of someone who didn't even earn it? Clearly, these contradictions didn't even occur to Kyle. He was simply throwing out things he didn't like about me. To summarize, his declaration was just a selfish demand for me to live the way he wanted. There was no trace of the serious and sincere Kyle I had once fallen in love with.
More than anything, you stopped understanding my music. You used to praise me so much back then.
He added that at the end. Could it be that this was the real reason behind his decision? If that was the case, maybe I never truly understood Kyle from the start. I want to believe that's not the case, but I'll never know the truth now. Sometimes people rewrite their memories to fit their own convenience. I have a lot to say, but let me just say one thing. It's not that I stopped understanding your music. You've simply lost your own music.
Don't just say whatever you want just because you don't want a divorce.
It's not just whatever. At least the old Kyle never said something as pathetic as wanting to be praised. Of course, I'm not saying that you shouldn't want praise or anything like that. Whether it's music or any other kind of work, doesn't the creator put energy into it that forces the emotions of the people who experience it? It's not about hoping to be praised, but about creating work that naturally earns admiration. That's what I think is ideal. I'm not sure if my intentions came across clearly. Perhaps Kyle simply didn't like being contradicted, as he blushed and excitedly responded,
What? It's pathetic that all you can do is nitpick. You really have gone downhill. It's no surprise you're getting divorced.
"Right. So, I'm fine with a divorce. But do you have any conditions? Just so you know, I'm not giving up custody of Mary."
Oh, whatever. You can have custody. She never warmed up to me anyway.
Kyle's selfish words made my chest twist with displeasure. But on the other hand, I also felt relieved. Mary's custody was my number one priority. I had anticipated that Kyle wouldn't want it, though there was a chance he might demand child support. I was grateful the situation hadn't gone that way, and I exhaled with relief. Kyle, clearly confident, flashed a smug grin at me.
Well, if you want, I'll even pay alimony. So hurry up and finalize the divorce.
After making that declaration, Kyle didn't say anything further and simply sent me a mocking glance. It seemed like he had finished saying everything he wanted to. "Is that all?"
What else am I supposed to say?
Even though I asked as if it were my final warning, Kyle just tilted his head in confusion. "You're shallow."
What's shallow?
When I expressed my honest opinion, Kyle immediately raised his voice. I had no reason to be moved by it, so I muttered to myself that it was probably time. At that moment, I decided it was time to let out the anger I had kept inside. I took a small breath and then prepared to shape my anger into words. To put it simply, I was livid. It's everything. It's just a bunch of convenient words where you're hiding what you really want to say. If this isn't shallow, then what is? Are you an idiot?
What do you mean convenient words?
Well, one thing is that you didn't say a word about your affair partner. Her name was Rachel, right? When I said Rachel's name, Kyle's eyes widened in surprise. Until now, he must have thought I was just a clueless fool. But too bad for him. Right in front of him, I slammed down the evidence that had been collected.
What is this?
Can't you tell? These are the evidence of your affair with Rachel. As Kyle saw the evidence the investigator had gathered, his eyes began to dart around nervously. And among those pieces of evidence, there was more than just proof of an affair. There was evidence of the existence of Kyle and Rachel's son, Tyler. Tyler looks great in these pictures, doesn't he? By the way, I have one question. Tyler is your son, right?
That is, well,
Hurry up and answer me. Is Tyler your son? Don't lie, because if you do, it'll hurt your case in court. At the mention of court, Kyle's eyes went wide in shock.
court. What do you mean by court?
If we can't come to a conclusion in this discussion, that's what I mean. Just so you know, if it goes to court, I'll present not only this, but plenty of other evidence. Apparently, the mention of court caught Kyle off guard, and he started sweating profusely. Considering the room wasn't hot, it was clear he was panicking. After a while, seemingly overwhelmed by his anxiety, Kyle hesitantly admitted,
Tyler is my son. Is that enough?
"There's no way I'm satisfied with this. And by the way, Tyler is 4 years old, right? So that means you've been cheating for 4 years, right? And on top of that, you didn't even bother with basic contraception. What's that about?"
Well, Rachel wanted a child, and Mary never warmed up to me.
The moment I heard those words, I picked up the nearest glass of water and slammed it down on the table. It didn't break, of course, since my small arms couldn't do that, but the loud sound echoed throughout the cafe.
No.
Kyle was so startled that his chair shook violently, almost tipping over. I stared at him and spoke in a sharp tone. "Mary didn't warm up to you? That's because you didn't do anything a father should do. If you want her to look up to you as a father, then start acting like one."
I worked hard, didn't I?
Is earning money all that it takes to be a father? Are you saying your dad never did anything for you? Mentioning his father caught Kyle off guard, and he couldn't come up with a response. I let out a deep sigh in front of Kyle, who had lost for words. "That's just another of your convenient excuses. You think just making money is enough? Any reasonable person would see that's not enough to be a good parent."
Fine, I get it. I'm a bad father and a villain. Are you happy now?
As I was about to say more, Kyle suddenly snapped like a child, not wanting to hear anymore.
I guess you want more alimony and child support, huh? Fine, I'll pay. I'll have a lot of money coming in soon.
"Oh, really? How's that?"
I told you, I'm getting a song from a famous composer. With that, I'll make a fortune.
The word fortune just made me feel sad. Kyle had completely discarded his past dream of becoming big, and now it was just about making money. "Well, you won't be making that fortune anymore."
What do you mean by that?
While Kyle was confused, I took out my laptop. I quickly checked the draft I had prepared and sent the message. "It means you won't be getting any songs from me."
What did you say?
Kyle's face went pale as he looked at the screen on my laptop, checking the email address and message details. If he had been excited about getting a song, he should have checked the sender's information many times by now. So he probably understood what I was and what my intentions were, and that the songs were no longer available.
Catherine, you're that famous composer?
Yeah, that's right. When I was younger, I was a member of a band and also the composer for it. Then, my talent faded and I retired. But after meeting Kyle and having Mary, I woke up to a new perspective. That brought back the creativity I thought I had lost. The music I produced from the emotions that had been building up inside me was something I shared with my old bandmates. And before I knew it, the song became a huge hit. I came back as a composer. I continued making music alongside my duties as a stay-at-home mom. That was my other side, my work. It wasn't about making music for any specific person, but rather offering the music that happened to match the needs of whoever needed it. That was my way. But considering my situation with Kyle, I bent my own rules. I made music just for him. But that decision only led to Kyle's further recklessness. Maybe it was inevitable that Kyle would go down this path sooner or later.
That's a lie. That can't be true.
Then do you want to hear it? The song I made for you. With that, I opened the folder on my computer and played the music file. It wasn't something I wanted to do, but it was a piece I had poured my heart into.
What?
Maybe it was because Kyle believed my words, or perhaps he was moved by the song's quality. Or maybe it was the sorrow of realizing he couldn't use the song. Kyle broke down, tears streaming down his face, and collapsed. In the quiet of the cafe, only the song I created continued to play. Kyle and I got divorced. During that time, he was forced to agree to alimony and child support. At the start, I had no doubt that Kyle thought he could pay it off with the profits from my song. But when I canceled my offer to provide him with any more music, all of that came to a halt. To make things worse, because Kyle had prematurely advertised the song, he became a target of outrage online, branded as the scumbag who lied to make his new song a hit. It turned into a much bigger scandal than anyone could have imagined, and he was never able to continue his career as a singer. At the same time, Kyle's career as a company employee also became irreparable. When I demanded alimony from Rachel, she flipped out and stormed into Kyle's company, causing a huge scene. As a result, their affair was known by the top executives at both of their companies. It also came to light that they had frequently skipped work to meet up, leading to Kyle and Rachel both being fired. With all of this, paying alimony became very difficult for him. Rachel, on top of everything, had Tyler, the child they had together. With nowhere else to go, she sought refuge with her family, but was rejected, and she has since disappeared. As for Kyle, after losing his job, his whereabouts were unknown. Rumors spread that he had joined a deep-sea fishing vessel to pay off his debts, but no one knew for sure. The only thing I know is that the payments are still being made, so he is probably still alive. But I no longer care what happens to him. As for Mary and me, we continue living in the house where her father once lived. There's no shame in that. There's no need for us to move. I don't know how this situation will affect our future. But at least I was able to create one song. I sincerely hope that the song I created, which was made with the wish of helping someone rise again, will be of use to someone.